Good morning. In our gospel reading this morning, the disciples are graduating. They've studied with Jesus for 3 years, and they're about to launch into the world on their own, without him. They are a close-knit group. They've been through a lot together, and they're about to go their separate ways. Now, like most graduates, some of them are excited, and some of them doubt. They doubt themselves, doubt the future, and with good reason. They are a small graduating class. It hardly seems like 11 people could make a difference in the world, a world of political and religious corruption that goes to the very core of their institutions, a world of stunning economic and racial division, a world that kills innocent people like Jesus. It hardly seems like 11 people could make a difference. Before they go, Jesus calls them together and gives them a commencement speech. It's often called the Great Commission. It's short. He doesn't wax poetic about all the time they spent together, the places they hung out, the characters they met, because Jesus has never really been about what's happened in people's past. And he doesn't inspire them with visions of the difference that he expects them to make in the future, in the world. He doesn't inspire them with visions of the outcome of all their years of education with him, their rabbi, their teacher. Because Jesus has never really been focused on getting results. But like all good graduation speeches, Jesus does have some advice, a few last things he wants to pass along. And so, instead of focusing on the past or the future, Jesus' speech might be titled, "The Top 3 Takeaways from the School of Jesus." And the speech is for all of us, everywhere, who are Jesus followers. Takeaway number 1. Remember that nothing is beyond God. In March of 1960, police in South Africa killed 69 unarmed protesters. 10 of them were children. It is now known as the Sharpeville Massacre, and it immediately led to the country's first state of emergency. One of those detained during that time was Nelson Mandela, a name most of us are familiar with. But a name many of us know far less well is that of Frederick Willem de Klerk. Born in South Africa's white ruling class, he grew up and joined the Conservative National Party. He enthusiastically supported the division of Black South Africans into 8 ethnic groups with differing levels of privilege. He supported and enforced apartheid, the country's system of racial injustice. He was elected South Africa's president. He oversaw the state security forces that committed widespread atrocities on Black people. And then, seeing that growing animosity and violence were threatening to tear his country apart, Frederick surprised pretty much everyone. He freed Nelson Mandela. He sanctioned anti-apartheid demonstrations and political parties. And he worked to dismantle apartheid and peacefully establish a new, equal country. We get mired down in the world's problems. There seem to be so many of them. Racial injustice, environmental destruction, political breakdown, poverty, disease. We get stuck on who's in power now and who might be in power next, and what they can do and what they should do. We argue about who can solve this problem or that problem, or even what problems need solving. It's so easy to lose hope, to demonize the other side, to forget that nothing and no one is beyond God's reach. Jesus followers remember that nothing is beyond God. The whole point of Jesus' resurrection is that there is nothing so broken, so ugly, so awful that God cannot redeem it. So vote. Work for change you believe in. Stand up for justice and peace on the earth. And when your Twitter feed or your news source makes you feel like all is hopeless, remember that nothing is beyond God, who is the final authority in heaven and on earth. And God never uses that authority to punish the people that we think deserve it, or reward the people that we think deserve that. Jesus, God with us, never did that. Instead, God uses God's authority to move hearts, to open up possibilities, to pull the world and everyone in it ever towards life and love. And God does that through us. 2,000 years ago, the graduating class of 11 people from the School of Jesus went out and changed the world by believing that nothing was beyond God. Now, more than ever, the world needs Jesus followers like that. Takeaway number 2. Welcome everyone. There's a woman named Bertice in my mom's church in Savannah, Georgia. Bertice is Black, and she's always bringing all kinds of people to church and introducing them around. And one Sunday she brought 2 young white men, and she introduced them to Michael, the rector, and everybody else in the congregation as her nephews. A few eyebrows were raised, but people figured maybe there was an interracial marriage in the family. And then one day, a couple weeks later, Michael's 2 young sons were standing talking with Bertice after church, and they are also white, and she introduced them to a couple of newcomers as her nephews. And well, they obviously aren't. She's not related to Michael at all. And that was the moment that Michael realized Bertice's definition of family is way bigger than his. In Jesus, we're all family. And Jesus tells us to welcome everyone. Now, people often think that this command to baptize and make disciples of all the nations means going door to door to convert people or browbeating them into submission to your version of Christianity. It doesn't. Jesus never did that. It's important to know the context here. Jesus is talking to his followers, these 11, and they're all Jewish. They've all been raised to believe that eating with people from another race is abhorrent, that talking with certain women or lepers makes you unclean, that their people and theirs alone are chosen, special, favored by God. And Jesus is specifically telling them otherwise. His command to make disciples of all nations is very specifically intended to open their eyes and their hearts to the Gentiles, to non-Jews. He's telling them to welcome everyone, even if they have different customs and beliefs and clothing and language and skin color, even if their ideas and actions seem unfathomable. He's telling them to extend the love of God to nieces and nephews and aunties and uncles of every color and every background and every belief. Because when you can sit down at a table and share a meal of bread and wine with somebody different, somebody other, that's when God can get to work on you both. 2,000 years ago, The graduating class of 11 people from the School of Jesus went out and changed the world by welcoming everyone. Now more than ever, the world needs Jesus followers like that. Number 3, know your purpose. There's a story, a parable really, of a young African boy who goes to live with a Christian missionary for 3 months. And at the end of the 3 months, he says, "Goodbye. Thank you for letting me live with you and share meals with you and for teaching me about Jesus. Now I'm going to the next town over and I'm going to live with the Muslim woman there for 3 months." And the missionary says, "What? Why?" And the little boy says, "Well, in order to make up my mind about God, I wanted to see how the people who follow God act. So I came here to see how Christians live." Wow. Jesus' last instruction to his followers is to teach others to obey his commandments. And you can only do that by how you live. You see, we are not called to live according to the conventional wisdom of the world, the wisdom you get from graduation speeches filled with good life advice, or from self-help books on the habits of effective people, or the power of positive thinking, or living your best life. None of those things are about living as a follower of Jesus. Because to be a follower of Jesus, you don't have to change who you are. You just have to be you. We all have different gifts, different skills, different talents, and God never asks anyone to be anything other than who God made them to be. God took Moses, a desert shepherd, and asked him to shepherd the Israelites through the desert. Jesus invited the fishermen James and John to become fishers of men. God never once said to them, "Come, find me when you've cleaned up your act and gotten yourself together, and then I'll find a purpose for you." So don't let anyone else tell you to be someone other than who you are. As followers of Jesus, our purpose on earth is to take our unique and beautiful gifts and talents and skills and use the lives we create with those to show others how we follow Jesus. And in the end, it's actually very simple. Because despite all that beautiful variety of personality and ability, there is only one way to live as a Jesus follower: the way of love. 2,000 years ago, the graduating class of 11 people from the School of Jesus went out and changed the world by knowing that their purpose was love. Now more than ever, our purpose is love. Nothing is beyond God. Welcome, everyone. Know your purpose. Love. And in case any one of those sounds most days like a pretty tall order, and all three of them together sound almost impossible, Jesus closes his speech with a phrase that bookends, that frames the Gospel of Matthew. In chapter 1, the angel says to Mary that her son shall be called Emmanuel, which means God is with us. And here at the very end of the gospel, in the very last verse, Jesus' very last words are, "I am with you always, to the end of the age." And all of us followers of Jesus, graduates of his school of love, will fail at these three things every day. But we do not do them alone. Jesus is with us always. Whatever comes next, in 2020 and beyond, in all that we have before us, we are not alone. So we will keep on trying, because now, more than ever, the world needs Jesus' followers. Amen.